Hi, this is Catherine Moore, and I am back to talk about the policies of the Texas Annual Conference with the United Methodist denomination in Houston, Texas. And um, so I wanted to talk about, so I noticed that a bishop, the bishop of the Texas Conference, the current bishop, Cynthia Harvey, she had posted on Facebook about she was a fangirl of Brene Brown, which is interesting, because um, despite the fact that the Texas Annual Conference has labeled me as mentally ill and mentally unwell, since an administration that has a history of employing child abusers, they're experts on mental health, um, and so she was, enjoying it, I guess, posting on Facebook about her experience about uh, Brene Brown and that she's a fan. And I am also a fan. I have, in my moments where I actually found some clarity in the midst of my mental illness that was diagnosed by armchair experts within the Texas Annual Conference, after surviving sexual assault from a United Methodist clergy that was employed under the Texas Annual Conference, an administration that seems to think that they are experts on mental health. And I've watched Brene Brown's uh, YouTube videos. I've watched her TED Talks. I have read her books, and I related to her experience when her mother was at Methodist Hospital, and describing the Methodist Hospital, um, because I think maybe I had the experience in the Methodist Hospital and was familiar with it, possibly because I grew up within the Texas Annual Conference, and I'm not just some homeless, pathetic, poor bag lady that walked in off the streets. Um, let's see, what was it my mother said? Oh, yeah. My mother said I was a joke. The woman that was employed by a United Methodist minister who drugged me so that her husband, who happened to be my sperm donor, could sexually assault me, who was employed by the Texas Annual Conference administration, because, the Texas Annual Conference, they are clearly experts on mental health. Who knew? Anyway, yeah, and it brought to mind one of the quotes that Brene Brown used that I wanted to bring up and remind Cynthia Harvey, and I wanted to ask her a question. Bishop Cynthia Harvey, who is the bishop of the Texas Annual Conference. So Brene Brown, this is from Google AI Review. Brene Brown frequently references Theodore Roosevelt's famous "The Man in the Arena" quote from his 1910 speech, "Citizenship in a Republic," as a core concept in her work. One of my ancestors was actually BFFs with Theodore Roosevelt, was Quanah Parker. Yeah, I did name drop. It's amazing, isn't it? You see, I actually am somebody, and I came from somebody important. But, my mother did say that I was a joke, right? And I am a misfit from the Texas Annual Conference who was sexually assaulted by one of their clergy. Anyway, I digress. Let me continue. So, Brene Brown frequently references Theodore Roosevelt's famous man in the arena quote from his 1910 speech, Citizenship in a Republic, as a core concept of her work, particularly for its emphasis on showing up and being brave in the face of criticism. I wonder if Cynthia Harvey has ever shown up in the face of criticism. But I'm pretty sure that showing up in the face of criticism as a bishop would be a cakewalk compared to being a survivor of sexual assault from a United Methodist minister that was employed by a multi-billion-dollar administration that wanted to sweep it under the rug. Anyway, so, and then it says it's a central theme in her book, Daring Greatly. I read Daring Greatly. What I would love to ask Cynthia Harvey, have you ever dared greatly? I very seriously doubt. Pretty sure Cynthia Harvey is not a survivor of sexual assault. I doubt it. I'm sure she doesn't have a clue what it's like to live with complex PTSD and health issues from repeated trauma and retaliation from a multi-billion-dollar administration such as the Texas Annual Conference with the United Methodist denomination that supports rape culture and sexual assault of children and sexual harassment of women in front of children. The quote highlights that the credit belongs to those actively participating in the challenges of life rather than the critics observing from the sidelines, such as a multi-billion-dollar administration like the Texas Annual Conference that has a history of employing sexual predators because they support rape culture and child abuse and sexual assault of minors. And because they support retaliation of any survivors that choose to speak out and resist. And, I'm wondering if Cynthia Harvey has ever been in the arena. It would definitely not be the same arena I've been in, because she probably couldn't handle it. So the quote's meaning is focus on participation, not criticism. Like if you are a survivor of sexual assault from a United Methodist clergy and you're met with criticism by the people that employed him and other clergy who were sexual predators. By speaking out, despite any criticism you may get from the Texas Annual Conference about your mental health, when anyone who is sexually assaulted, their mental health is affected. which is interesting. It's an interesting concept, right? Because they wanted to go after my mental health to discredit me. But the result is I have a mental health diagnosis that is because of the abuse I went through. You're not born with PTSD. You're not born with complex PTSD. So it's interesting. There's something wrong with me because I'm mentally ill. So is that why I was abused? Does the Texas Annual Conference think that anyone who is mentally ill or mentally incapacitated in any way, that they should be abused? And then, because they're abused, there's something wrong with them. And on top of that, then they receive a diagnosis. And then because they receive a diagnosis, there's something wrong with them. So because there's something wrong with them, they're abused. Because they have a mental health diagnosis, should discredit their story. Their experience is not relevant. That's interesting. So, which is it? Is it because the Texas Annual Conference doesn't have a problem with anyone who's mentally ill being abused? Or is it that anyone who is abused, they want that victim to be labeled as mentally ill, to sabotage their credibility? It doesn't matter because they don't know what's going on. It's interesting that Cynthia Harvey is a fan of Brene Brown and her quotes and her writing. And she hasn't been in the same arena I've been in. I'm sure of that. So also, I'm going to talk about the candidacy. Okay, here we go. I'm going to talk about the residency program handbook of 2023 for candidates preparing for ordination in the Texas Annual Conference. I'm doing this from the perspective of a sexual assault survivor. They made this for clergy in training, but they didn't expect a sexual assault survivor from a clergy that was once employed by them to read it online, on camera. I survived sexual assault from a United Methodist minister named John Dowden, who was once employed by the Texas Annual Conference administration. And he was not the only clergy who was a sexual predator. Kendall Graham, who also sexually assaulted Alicia Provost Whitfield, and she received a multi-million-dollar settlement. A letter was leaked into my paperwork by Harrison Fisher, who warned me that the Texas Annual Conference would retaliate if I continued to speak out. That if it got into the media, that the Texas Annual Conference would say that I was mentally ill, and that they would assist my ex-husband, Carl Edward Anthony, a child abuser himself, because the Texas Annual Conference really loves child abusers, don't they? And that they would assist my ex-husband in getting our kids away from me. And look where they are now. They're in a huge mess because they didn't think I would be doing this. And so I decided to do videos where I would read the policies and procedures of the Texas Annual Conference Administration. I also, and Harrison Fisher was right, they did retaliate. And I also had to visit my kids through supervised visitation at a United Methodist Church. It was St. Stephen's United Methodist Church. And I was sexually harassed in front of my kids at St. Stephen's United Methodist Church, in front of the Domestic Relations Office, and in front of St. Stephen's United Methodist Church. I was sexually harassed by a visiting parent and also by a staff of the Domestic Relations Office at South Main Baptist Church in front of my kids. So basically, the South Main Baptist Church and the Domestic Relations Office of Harris County and the Texas Annual Conference of the United Methodist Denomination and St. Stephen's United Methodist Church all support rape culture and sexual assault of minors. Because I told the Domestic Relations Office what the Texas Annual Conference failed to inform them of their history of employing sexual predators, one of them being my father. I was kicked out of the supervised visitation program because I exposed the fact that I had been sexually harassed in front of my kids. And so, since I can't see my kids, and I haven't seen my sons in a year, and I'm sure that's my fault because my ex-husband is using them to abuse me, and it's my fault because I'm a sexual assault survivor. So it's all my fault. I guess the key thing here to keep in mind is it's my fault. I guess that, I don't know, maybe that somehow helps people process it. So I'm going to continue and read the Residency Program Handbook of 2023 and it's for candidates preparing for ordination in the Texas Annual Conference Administration within the United Methodist denomination. And my relationship with the Texas Annual Conference goes far beyond my father being employed under that administration. I have other family members that have been involved in the Texas Annual Conference Administration, including Judge Morris Hassel, because I am related to the Hassel family as well, which they didn't know and probably wouldn't have believed me, but it really doesn't matter. Okay. So it is also required for a minimum of 2 years for those who transfer into the annual conference as commissioned members in other annual conferences, and those who are ordained in other Methodist denominations and other denominations. The residency program is recommended for those who are serving in the annual conference on loan from other annual conferences. A retreat is held in the first quarter of the provisional members commissioning. During this retreat, the provisional member learns about the Texas Annual Conference and the support systems of the conference. The mentoring process begins with a mentor and a peer group who, from a resident covenant group, who form a resident covenant group. These groups are assigned for you. They meet at least 6 times the first year and 4 times in the second year to work on various focus issues that are assigned and some which are chosen by the group. A covenant is written and agreed upon at the retreat. Supervision and accountability are part of all clergy leadership in the United Methodist Church. Our Wesleyan heritage established mutual accountability as the way to effective discipleship and leadership in the church. Now, their idea of accountability is not being accountable for sexual assault of minors or sexually harassing women. They support those behaviors. Okay? From the class meetings of the 18th century, our current peer groups, United Methodists have always understood that accountability and supervision are an important and positive part of our witness, unless their clergy choose to sexually assault children or murder their spouse or sexually harass women. And of course, anybody who is accused of sexual harassment, they're allowed to come back to the Texas Annual Conference. Oh, that I know. I saw it. Commissioned members have supervision at 2 or 3 different levels as they prepare for ordained ministry. Each level of supervision has a specific function in preparing the resident for full membership. Okay. They should have like a disclaimer, there is no supervision if a clergy chooses to sexually assault a child. But they don't have that because you see, they're not interested in that type of accountability. They just want to sweep it under the rug. The district superintendent is the administrative supervisor. 401, the purpose of superintending is to equip the church in its disciple-making ministry. Those who superintend carry primary responsibility for ordering the life of the church. It is their task as well to see that all matters, temporal and spiritual, are administered. So I wonder, I mean, apparently you can be selected to be a district superintendent and, you know, have, you could have partied when you were younger and hung out at a honky-tonk club like Solly's, like Steve Woody. They don't care about that. They just hate you if you're a survivor of sexual assault by one of their clergy. Oops, I mentioned a name. Okay. I'm going to continue. District superintendent. This is 421. To establish a clearly understood process of supervision for clergy of the district, including observation of all aspects of ministry, direct evaluation, and feedback to the clergy involved. So you too can have a past of partying at a honky-tonk club outside of Jasper and actually work as a district superintendent on the cabinet with the bishop. But if you are a sexual assault survivor of one of their clergy, they consider you as nothing more than garbage. Your district superintendent provides guidance in both the work of the parish and in vocational development. The superintendent is responsible for providing a recommendation in writing for ordination and full membership to the Board of Ordained Ministry as your superintendent. Hopefully, each resident will come to know his or her district superintendent as a trusted colleague in ministry, as well as a supervisor. This is page 6. This is number 2. The residency mentor is the structured learning supervisor. Vocationally formative relationships are the function of mentoring. The residency mentor is responsible for facilitating a quality group experience of collegial support and structured learning for excellence in clergy leadership. The mentor facilitates, listens, reflects back, asks questions, and counsels when needed. The mentor should be a trusted colleague in ministry during the residency and after ordination throughout life in ordained ministry. I must be doing such a great job for being someone who it's been assumed by the Texas Annual Conference that I'm in a cognitive decline. I'm doing a pretty good job reading this, I guess. Anyway, I'm going to continue. The senior pastor, for those in multiple staff appointments, or supervisor, for those appointed to program ministries or extension ministries, supervises the ministry setting for the resident. The resident should take responsibility for keeping his or her ministry setting supervisor fully informed about the requirements of the residency program and the need for full participation. Your senior pastor or supervisor will receive a letter from the residency program director explaining the disciplinary and Board of Ordained Ministry requirements for the program. Hopefully, this supervisor becomes a trusted colleague in ministry. Just to make sure that you make the right friends on the cabinet and with the bishop. And usually it's even better if you do it with some of the higher paid clergy. You want to be a part of the good old boys club. Okay. So continuity of supervision. If it was that cognitive decline kicking in that I've been labeled with by the Texas Annual Conference and Carly Anthony because they're experts. Anyway, continuity of supervision. There you go. All right. If at any time it is necessary to change a mentor in the midst of the residency period, An exchange of information about the process of the person involved will be made between the mentors so that there will be continuity and consistency of supervision. Both the mentor and the resident may contact the residency program director with questions and supervision. By the way, speaking of supervision, does this mean that anyone on the board of ordained ministry or the mentors or the district superintendent follow anyone in the resident program to the restroom to supervise them while they're on the toilet having a bowel movement or urinating on the toilet like they do at St. Stephen's United Methodist Church during the supervised visitation programs? I mean, I know that they enjoy their listening to that. So I have video of myself on the toilet at a supervised visitation program. If they would like to watch that and hear the sounds I'm making on the toilet, since they approve of parents being followed in a United Methodist Church and being treated that way. Okay. Summary. The Board of Ordained Ministry, through developing connectional ministry residency program, has set forth its fervent hope that ordained ministry in the Texas Annual Conference will be enriched by a biblically grounded, spiritually formed, theologically educated, and functionally trained clergy. Wow, big words for somebody who's in a cognitive decline. Our aim is to empower clergy persons to live into their call, find fulfillment and sustenance in their witness, personhood, and professional dignity throughout their lifetime of ministry. I guess they lost the dignity. Through administering the program, keeping it updated and renewed, we move forward in the service of the United Methodist Church in the name of Jesus Christ our Lord. Dr. Hooper Haygood, past director. Hooper Haygood was on the board of trustees at Lon Morris College. So he knew Judge Morris Hassel. I went to college with Hooper Haygood's granddaughter at Lon Morris. Okay, residency program 2023 through 2025. First year after commissioning requirements. Orientation event with Berkman Training May. Attend a day of wellness. At least 6 meetings of your resident covenant group. At least 4 meetings with lay consultation team. First residency effectiveness team meeting November through December. 1, develop growth plan at first RET meeting, residency effective team meeting. This growth plan will be personalized to your situation and needs and will be a substantial part of your residency process. All right. You are encouraged to participate in connectional activities such as the Gathering Elders, Deacons Retreat, Marriage Retreat, District Camp, etc. Second year after commissioning, annual conference, mission trip with cabinet, usually October, 2 meetings with LCT at least, 4 meetings with your RCG, minimum. District Superintendent Recommendation Letter. Prepare papers as required by Board of Ordained Ministry. Meet all deadlines. Ordination packets. Around October 15th, ordination packets are sent out by the candidacy manager. Around January 22nd, ordination packets are due to the registrar candidacy manager. Packets will include disciplinary questions as assigned, sermon on assigned Bible study, a short paper about your fulfillment in ministry, and a few personal forms. If any part of this is late, you may be delayed a year. If you have any questions, please contact Candidacy Manager Reverend Ben Burnside. Second, RET meeting, February through March. Board of Ordained Ministry interviews, March. Election to full connection and ordination at annual conference. Ordination at annual conference. And I will continue later. So that's all I have. And if you're wondering, I am well aware of what I'm saying, and there's a lot of sarcasm. I am a very sarcastic person. And I have no problem saying I deserved to be abused, because I know that's what the Texas Annual Conference wants to hear. So I'm going to tell them what they want to hear. But I'm going to do it where the public can hear me. And I have read Brene Brown's books. And one of the most important lessons that I learned from Brene Brown was that people are doing the best that they can with what they have to work with. And that was powerful for me. Now, you could say, the Texas Annual Conference, they're just a bunch of overeducated people, with master's degrees. They're doing the best they can. They're a bunch of baboons that are overeducated, and they're doing the best they can. They probably should have been ditch diggers, but they're doing the best they can. But they failed. They failed. They fail in protecting women. They fail in protecting victims of domestic violence. They fail in accountability when their clergy violate children and any human being in the worst possible way. And I'm glad that Cynthia Harvey is so important that she can get tickets to hear Brene Brown. I could never be worthy enough. And it is so hypocritical that she would post her admiration of Brene Brown. And she doesn't have any idea what it's like to be in the arena I've been in and I'm still in.